Good morning, everyone, and welcome to University Unitarian Church in Seattle, Washington. It's Sunday, January the 10th, and we're delighted that you could join us from Seattle or Washington State or from wherever you are viewing. A belated Happy New Year to all of you. My name is Jon Luopa. I'm one of the ministers here. I'm here with my colleague Beth Chronister, our musicians and tech crew. Delighted to present this worship service to you, with you today. Let us begin the service.
I call us to worship this morning with these words from the Reverend Rebecca Parker. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question. What will you do with your gifts? Welcome to worship this morning. Welcome to University Unitarian Church from wherever you are. It is good to be together. Will you please join me now in singing our doxology? The words will be on the screen.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land, on every tongue.
On the second Sunday of each month, we share our offering plate with an organization in the wider community doing the work of love in public and of justice. On this morning, we will be sharing our offering plate with Yoga Behind Bars, an organization here in Washington State that has been offering yoga, meditation, and yoga teacher trainings in prisons across the state for well over a decade. And we will hear from one of the people whose lives was very impacted by this program now.
Hello, my name is Sarai Cook, and I'm the staff attorney for the Civil Survival Project in Seattle, Washington. We are an organization led and staffed by formerly incarcerated people. We organize people in the state of Washington who have been directly impacted by the criminal justice system. We help people build community connections, gain justice system knowledge, and increase political participation. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak about my own personal experience with doing yoga behind bars. When I went to prison in 2004, I knew pretty early on that I wanted to get out as soon as possible and never go back. I spent a month or so in maximum security, where I spent 23 hours a day locked in a cell with only me and my thoughts. Later, I was moved to minimum security for the duration of my stay. Looking back, I see that successful reentry starts from the inside. From the first day, every action and every decision is a step toward or a step away from prolonged incarceration or a subsequent period of incarceration. Availability of jobs, substance abuse counseling, religious services, and programming such as yoga behind bars is essential to the reentry process. In fact, yoga behind bars covers all of these areas. A period of incarceration, while not a great experience, can be a turning point for women and men like myself. Yoga behind bars and similar programs gave me an option to choose myself, to choose my recovery, and to choose my self-esteem every day. Trauma is insidious. Trauma, and especially early childhood trauma and prolonged trauma, has profound effects on the body, mind, and spirit. Trauma leads to substance abuse, incarceration, and untimely death. Many incarcerated people like myself are victims of violent crimes way before we become perpetrators. For me personally, yoga has helped with my trauma. I credit my yoga practice inside with putting me in a state of understanding where I was open to learning new tools for dealing with my life and helping me to reenter society successfully. Most people that go to prison will come home someday. These humans will be in your community, at the store with you, at the gas station with you, and on the roads with you. I don't know about you, but I would much rather interact with folks who have done the sun salutation, focused on breath, and centered themselves before I run into them out in the world. Supporting programming inside prisons that help people to be healthy and thriving community members, and removing barriers that prevent formerly incarcerated people from rebuilding their lives is key to building a criminal justice system that is restorative and not harmful. I hope you will consider helping our most vulnerable people by giving them the gift of the practice of yoga. Thank you.
Would you please join now in singing hymn number 10, Immortal Love?
Immortal love forever full, forever
As I mentioned, our offering this morning will be given to Yoga Behind Bars in support of their programming, bringing yoga and meditation and yoga teacher training into prisons across Washington state. If you'd be interested in learning more about Yoga Behind Bars, on January 17th, next Sunday, we'll be hosting a program on Zoom that will begin with a brief trauma-informed yoga course, similar to what they teach, and then a back and forth of questions and reflection around their work in reimagining not only public safety, but reimagining community care. I hope to see you there. Would you please join me now in saying the words we say each week at our offering? This church is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it.
Not so unkind as man's ingratitude. Thy tooth is not so keen because thou art not seen. Although thy breath be rude, although thy breath be rude. Hey-ho, sing hey-ho unto the green holly, whose friendship is feigning, whose loving mere folly. Then hey-ho, the holly, this life is most jolly. Freeze the bitter sky that does not bite so nigh, as benefits forgot. Though thou the waters ward, thy sting is not so sharp. As friend remembered not, as friend remembered not. Hey-ho, sing hey-ho unto the green holly, whose friendship is feigning, whose loving mere folly. Then hey-ho, the holly, this life is most jolly, most jolly.
Would you please join me now in the spirit of prayer and of meditation? Spirit of life, moving in each inhalation and exhalation. Lead us gently back to this present moment. Call us back to our connectedness to one another, to this community, and to the earth. Call us back to that which is deepest in life. Spirit of life. Chaos swirls around us and our nation, in our personal lives, our hearts and homes, in the daily numbers of how many are newly infected and how many thousands of lives are lost each day. And an insurrection that mobbed the nation's capital, cloaked in the protections of power and privilege, brandishing violence, hatred, and deep disregard for this democracy. History is eerily present, and the future a vast unknowable. What was once surreal is now hardly surprising, even while it is shocking still. Spirit of life, holy presence abiding, protect what remains of our faith, what is steady and sure, that which has survived many storms and been tested by time and travail. Let faith be our guide, our ground, and our tether. Open new chambers of the heart, the places where courage is born of love and conviction is born of love of truth. And let the body breathe. For bodies braced for impact, prayers for protection. For bodies disassociated by trauma and numbed by overwhelm, prayers for a return to wholeness and to safety's embrace. For bodies filled with righteousness, prayers for clarity of purpose and the power to create anew. For bodies bearing the brunt of history's cruelties, prayers for relief and restoration on the wings of justice. For bodies holding the privileges of history's avarice, prayers to not hide from discomforting truths, and prayers for the courage to join these bodies in working for justice and equity. And for our body politic, let it breathe. Prayers for vision and action that moves us forward toward a future reconciled and a past redeemed, toward one another in pursuit of a working tomorrow. To these words, I invite you to add the silent prayers, meditations, and longings of your own heart. May faith be our guide, our ground, and our tether. Amen, and blessed be.
Quite a lively hymn, isn't it? Written by Mary Catherine Morn, who is the president of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. And all we needed were some drums and an opportunity to dance in the aisles, and believe me, we'll do it when we're all back together here in this space at UUC. It has been an enormously difficult week. I know for me and my family, we've been weighed down with some serious family issues that we are wrestling with and not yet out of, and that has precluded my engagement in some ways on the larger front of what's happening in our country. I think it goes without saying that every one of us is absolutely horrified by what happened in Washington, D.C. last Wednesday. But I think what it betokens is that there is and has been a very serious cancer in the body politic in this country for a very long time. And what we have witnessed over the last 4 years, and most egregiously in these last few weeks, is a flare-up of something that has been there for a long time. So those who were saying this is not who we are, this is not what we are about, are trying to sugarcoat what really is a structural injustice. I would even go so far as to say a structural evil embedded in our long story as American people. It was handled incompetently on many fronts, but what is most scary to me is that if there comes a more competent demagogue, what we are going to see in the future is far worse than what we saw this week. So then it is incumbent on all of us as citizens, as patriots, as human beings, as religious people, to find a way to prevent that from happening again. We will all need to search our hearts and our minds, our energies and our resources to be part of a better solution to a country, to a dream, to a constitution we all love and need to serve. This morning, I would like to suggest that there are 3 primary functions of religion, all kinds of religion. There may be many more divisions, but my guess is that most activities of religion can be subsumed under one of these 3 headings. And the first function of religion is philosophical, or what some scholars have called the cosmological component in religion. This is an attempt to explain the nature of life. It is the essence of philosophy in its most sophisticated forms, going back to the early Greeks, to give an explanation of what is happening here on earth. Who are we as a species? Where did we come from? What caused us? What governs and guides and directs us? What is the best way for us to make it through day to day? And what, if anything, is in the future? From the dawn of consciousness, human beings have wrestled with these deep questions, and we cannot avoid them and remain intelligent, sensitive people. Who are we? This is still a very great philosophical question. And so over time, religion has provided answers to these questions, often definitive, even authoritative answers, at least enough to satisfy the people living in the times in which the answers were given. So the first function of religion is a philosophical function. The second function is the social or moral function. If you're going to live with other people, you have to know how to behave. we're going to bump into each other and hurt each other. We should be able to help each other, but many times we do things we ought not to have done. And there are some of us always who would like to deprive others of their freedom. So we have to have some kind of guideline or code. And religion has often been a social institution that sets down rules of behavior for every part of life you can imagine. Just think of it, in the Hebrew Bible alone, there are 613 commandments, guidelines as to how you ought to behave in all of those different situations. In this way, religion determines what is right and good and moral, and it serves as a social construct signifying ethical, appropriate behavior. And religious people are supposed to be good and moral people. What's the old cliche? We don't use it, but we may have at an earlier time. We've certainly heard it. It's the Christian thing to do. You get my point. The moral, ethical function of religion. Secondly, and the third is what I would call the ceremonial or the liturgical. This is a way of honoring the passage of time. We take note of birth and puberty, marriage, death, crises, salvation. And to a large degree, all of this is really what I would call emotion frozen in time, into a gesture, into an action, or in other words, into a ritual. It is the medium of the human spirit, and it has been a major part of religious expression for all of remembered time. Without any question, I believe that this is probably the most important essence of religion, because it touches every person primitively. Even animals have rituals for mating, for nesting, at death. And we come, honestly, by the emotions that are so important over and above the thinking function, the philosophical, and over and above moral behavior. It touches the enormous privacy of how you feel and what you remember and what that does to you. Even when people no longer believe the doctrine or follow the rules or the guidelines, it is very hard for most people to give up the ritual. How many people do you know go to a bar mitzvah not believing in the teachings anymore of Judaism, but because it's my nephew and I'm supposed to be there for the family event? How many people come on Christmas Eve? Not because they believe in the virgin birth and are here to celebrate the birth of the Christ, but because it's the thing to do. We've been doing it for many years. It's our family custom on Christmas Eve. You get my point with that, okay? But what has happened to these three functions of religion? I think it is obvious to many of us that religion has lost much of its philosophical grounding. If you have any kind of educational background or historical perspective, you do not turn to religion necessarily to tell you who you are, or where you came from, or how life originated, or what the prospects are, or how life is governed, guided, or directed. You go to a scientist, or you go to a sociologist, or the professional philosopher, or you go to a psychiatrist for answers to those kind of questions. There is no necessary connection to religion anymore, even though some people still look to religion for it. Many more people do not. We have emancipated ourselves from religious centralization. And this church, all churches, have no more access than any one of us to the knowledge of how nature is put together or of what it is. And religion has no authority over us. The only authority we would recognize is the authority of the individual conscience or mind, and its ability to understand how to seek knowledge, to test it, to confirm it. So religion, for many modern or postmodern, if you want to get sophisticated about it, for most of those people, religion has lost almost all of its philosophical justification. What about the second function, the moral function? I think religion has lost much of its moral strength and authority too. We have no more access to truth than other people do. And it no longer makes sense for reflective persons that religion is privy to a peculiar definition of what is right and wrong. How can they justify the claim, we would ask? In a sense, it appears very foolish for religion to claim that a particular behavior is wrong. It would seem foolish to us if religion said, well, premarital sex is wrong. Birth control is wrong. Gay marriage is wrong. Abortion is wrong. Divorce is wrong, among many other things, when the majority of its adherents just go ahead and do it anyway. The moral status of most religion, of institutionally religion, is highly questionable for many thinking people, especially when it is caught in the web of its own hypocrisy, and it is unable, the religion is unable or unwilling to repent of its own misconduct. What about the third function, the ceremonial, that of ritual? The greatest loss of all, I think, comes here, because in many ways, this is the original power and essence of religion in human experience. And we have lost this largely in the processes of secularization. When the rituals lose their power, religion becomes completely meaningless. For this is the sense of reverence and awe and wonder that moves and motivates children as much as it does adults. How can you have liturgy and ritual without a sense of wonder and reverence? That is the question, and it is a very profound question, I think. We cannot just think up rituals. We try to do this sometimes. We just say, well, let's just make up a ritual. I have found almost every instance of this to be purely meaningless, because rituals do not originate in discursive thought. They originate in deep human emotion, so much so that they are convincing to all who practice them. They are the signature of our very deep organic response to the miracle of the gift of life, and they are our attempt to understand and appreciate the wonderment of life and the unfathomable mystery at the heart of all things. Well, I know you're totally discouraged right now, and it's not time to get a second cup of coffee. If these functions are so lost to so many, where is the heart and high purpose of religion for liberal, intelligent people. It may be that the only religious recourse we have had is in social action. Especially for us, it has even become the way we judge who is really thinking correctly and living ethically. Religion and social action are synonymous activities for many of us. My goodness, there are even people who choose to affiliate with a congregation like this based on the fact that we do social action. My goodness. But I'm going to ask you, in the time remaining to me, to reflect about this just a little. Let me begin by saying, unequivocally, that I believe that social action is absolutely indispensable to any religious community claiming integrity. But I think it can be a trap, and I think it can be a particularly liberal trap. And it has been one for us for nearly 200 years. Because we no longer look to a heavenly realm for salvation, and because science has so devastated the foundations of traditional religion, we have used the social sciences to improve the earthly realm. And the purpose of religion, especially liberal religion, has become the salvation of social ills by analysis and by finding intelligent solutions to political problems. But this approach is insufficient. So it's a conundrum then, isn't it, that it is both absolutely necessary if we are going to have any integrity, and yet it is inadequate on some grounds because it is unsustainable and it is prone to human bias and prejudice. And so we have made one of the major applications of religion into its sole expression. Work for social justice is an imperative in a religious community, as I understand it, but it is not the only thrust, and may even be only one thrust. For 15 years, I have had the privilege of teaching history in the local Jesuit university, Seattle University, where I had the great opportunity to befriend many great Jesuit scholars. One of them asked me some years ago this question: is there anything behind anger, frustration, and grievance in your social protest? In other words, is there a positive vision of the world for which you would die? Can you see something greater than the annoyance of the moment, something that transcends the immediate? Or put another way, maybe even theologically, how might you be so in love with the world that you would challenge its injustice while savoring its transcendent beauty? It is an historical fact that every kind of religion has had a tendency to wander away from its original genius, such that what passes for religion becomes uninteresting, unhelpful, unhealthy, and even distracting. And for us today who live largely distracted lives, this is an especially unfortunate situation. We are too involved and enmeshed and frenzied by it all. It takes 2 incomes today to keep a family in decent, normal circumstances. And dual income families, as the sociologists tell us, are a sign of downward mobility. We don't have time to volunteer. We're not permitted to volunteer now. With the pandemic, we are isolated in our own homes, adding a whole other layer of frustration. Some of us tried to find one evening to spend alone with our partner. Retired persons are busier than when they worked, or they are feeling completely useless because their lives of accomplishment are no longer necessary in the spheres of their own influence or among younger persons. The pressures on children are absolutely unfathomable today. And the hourly news, through all of its social media, gives us blips of sensational tragedies that we cannot adequately react to because we've got to keep it going enough to get up the next morning for work. I live this life. You live this life. I wake up at 6 a.m. and I read the New York Times. Not a good way to start the day. I am afraid that we in this church can contribute to this madness. Could we possibly have one service a year when we do not have to listen to announcements that remind us to do this and to do that and to show up here and don't forget that? And I know, I have been told for years that there are people who believe that the announcements are the most important part of the service. But I truly believe, too, that people are willing to get involved and participate and take on tasks and be reminded of responsibilities if they feel their need for reflection and insight and affirmation is being met. And I believe, too, that this is our primary obligation to you. And so, mindful of the frenzied activity, I think we need to be reminded why we gather together. My schedule, my balance sheet do not tell my whole story as a human being. When I am in touch with the suffering and poverty and tragedy and struggle of life, all of which is the really real part of life, I am able to come out of myself and to see not only opportunities for service, but also to recognize that I am a participant in the wondrous pageant called life. I am invited to see something greater than what is before me and commanded even by time to grow in my awareness of the magnificence all around me. I now think that this is what that Jesuit was asking me, and perhaps all of us. Could the way in which we carry ourselves through life be driven not only by frustration and anger, but primarily by love? Tandeyeka, who is one of our theologians, an African-American, wonderful woman, said in a workshop not too long ago that I attended and profoundly moved me. She said, "We come to church to measure our lives in love." I don't know of a better definition of what this is all about. Love, which makes justice possible, which fuels justice work because it is what we love so profoundly that has been violated that gives us the energy for redress and repair and restoration. I need to remember the grandeur and the beauty of being alive. It's learning again how to be sensitive enough and quiet enough to see what's going on, to catch the look in a person's eye, to notice the tension, to catch the drift of what is happening, to see where people are feverishly following a leader into unnecessary catastrophe. It's the having time to be sensitive enough to come through to you. It's about growing the conviction that every good thought and every good action accumulates and tips the balance toward justice. We need to find this again, and I am devoting my life toward freeing religion from idolizing its means, its intellectual definitions, its moral codes, its rituals, its just works, so that it can open up to loving life despite its struggles and shortcomings, its disappointments and deep tragedies, to find something like a deep trust in the underlying beauty and goodness of things. We who think this way must come together and support each other. We come together to reason. Yes, we do. We come together to share our fears and anxieties. Yes, we do. We come together in places like this to spend some time in quietness, to listen to something so beautiful that it sings of the joy of the miracle of life. Yes, we do. We come here to be inspired enough to sacrifice for a more just world. Yes, we do. And we come here to remember our anniversaries, to bury our beloved dead, to dedicate our children, and to remember the long line of those whose energy remains to bless us. Yes, we do. We come knowing that there are mysteries in the most magnificent of scientific discoveries that move us in awe and wonder. Yes, we do. And we come here in order to go out a little more nearly whole, a little more sensitively aware, a little more willing to respond to the opportunities, chances, and changes before us. Yes, we do. Surely, such affirmations are worthy of our greatest commitment. So may it be. Amen. Our closing hymn this morning is hymn number 140, Hail the Glorious Golden City. Well, my goodness, talk about ritual. That hymn is one of our rituals here at UUC. At least it has been for 21 years. It's a great hymn to a Welsh tune written by Felix Adler for the Ethical Culture Society in New York City in the 1860s. And its sentiment is true today, so much that we will contribute to building that reign of justice and mercy is only incremental, but hopefully enough to encourage the next generation to do what they can do to do their part for those who will follow them. Now, therefore, since the struggle deepens, since evil abides, evil remains, and good does not yet prosper or flourish, let us gather what strength we have, what confidence and valor, what boldness we have in facing great danger, that our small victories may end in triumph, and the world awaited, the world we yearn for and cry for, become a world attained. Amen.
Ich träumte von bunten Blumen, so wie sie wo blühen im Mai. Ich träumte von grünen Wiesen, von lustigem Volksgeschrei, von lustigem Volksgeschrei. Und als die Hähne krähten, da ward mein Auge wach, da war es kalt und finster, es schrien die Raben von Nacht. Da war es kalt und finster, es schrien die Raben von Nacht. Da an den Fensterscheiben, wer malte die Blätter da? An den Fensterscheiben, wer malte die Blätter da? Ihr lacht wohl über den Träume der Blumen im Wintersommer, der Blumen im Wintersommer. Ich träumte von Lieb um Liebe, von einer schönen Maid, von Händen und von Küssen, von Wohnseligkeit, von Wohn und Seligkeit. Und als die Hähne krähten, da ward mein Herz wach. Nun sitz ich hier alleine, so denke den Träumen nach. Sitz hier alleine und denke den Träumen nach. Die Augen schließ ich wieder, noch schlägt das Herz so warm. Die Augen schließ ich wieder, noch schlägt das Herz so warm.